Imagine for a second you're 13 years old, and you've just been handed the throne to a kingdom in a world that has only known brutal, nonstop war for centuries. Well, this is the story of the man who didn't just survive that chaos, he ended it. He forged an empire from scratch, and in doing so, pretty much created the very idea of China itself. This is the story of its first emperor.
Now, to really get a grip on this guy, you've got to understand the world he was born into. And for 2.5 centuries, that's longer than America has been a country, the land we now call China was a fractured, bleeding battleground. And I'm not talking about a single war with a start and an end. Nope, this was just the way things were. A constant, brutal, generation after generation state of being, where just making it to tomorrow was the only goal.
All right, so let's dive in. What did this era, this warring states period, what did it actually look like? Let's paint the picture.
Okay, so we're talking about a huge stretch of time here. It all kicks off around 475 BCE. You've got 7 big states, and they are basically locked in a fight to the death. Fast forward a bit to about 350 BCE, and one of those states, Qin, starts to get really serious with some major military reforms. By the time our guy shows up in 246 BCE, well, millions of people are already dead, and the stage is set for this new young king to take over.
And here they are, the major players on this bloody chessboard. You see Qin there? They were just one of the 7. There was absolutely no guarantee they were going to win this thing. I mean, look at their neighbors. Chu, Qi, Zhao. These were heavy hitters. It was this incredibly tense situation where one mistake, one bad battle, and you could be wiped off the map, gone forever.
All right, so into this absolute meat grinder of a world steps a boy king. But here's the twist. Before he could even think about conquering the world outside, he had a whole different war to fight, right inside his own palace.
Seriously, just think about that for a second. You're 13, and someone just hands you the keys to one of the most powerful, most brutal military states on the planet. The pressure would have been insane, right? His name was Ying Zheng, and let me tell you, he was no mere figurehead. He was about to show everyone that he was, without a doubt, the most dangerous person in the entire kingdom.
Now, to really get inside Ying Zheng's head, you have to get this one key idea: legalism. This was the operating system for the entire state of Qin. You had other philosophies floating around, like Confucianism, talking about morality and being a good person. Legalism, totally different. It wasn't about being good. It was about power. Pure, cold, efficient, absolute power. The state was everything. And the law was just a tool, a weapon to make the state stronger, no matter the cost.
And if you want proof of how he thought, look no further than this. The guy's still a teenager, right? And he's got plots happening right under his own roof. So what does he do? He uncovers a rebellion led by his own mother's lover and has the guy, well, let's just say the execution was famously brutal. Then he turns on his prime minister, a guy who is basically a father figure to him, and exiles him. Just wow. In a handful of years, he had systematically and ruthlessly taken out every single person who stood in his way. He was in complete, total control.
Okay, so with his power base at home totally locked down, the young king was ready. He took that incredibly efficient, ruthless Qin state and pointed it outwards, like a weapon, aimed at the heart of his rivals. He was about to unleash something the world had never seen.
Get this, over 1 million soldiers. 1 million! That's the machine Ying Zheng was now driving. And it wasn't just about numbers. This army was fueled by that iron-willed legalist discipline. They had smart farming reforms that fed the troops. And, crucially, you got promoted based on how good you were at fighting, not who your dad was. It all added up to the single most terrifying military force of its time. No question.
And here's what that machine did. In just a single decade, Ying Zheng did what no one else could do in 2.5 centuries. He just rolled over them. One by one, the other states just crumbled. The speed is absolutely mind-blowing. Han falls, then Zhao, then Wei. It was this relentless, unstoppable blitz. It got to the point where the very last state, Qi, just gave up. They surrendered without even putting up a fight. Just like that, centuries of war were over.
There's this quote from someone who was actually there, and it just hits the nail on the head. They said the Qin army was like a silkworm devouring a mulberry leaf. Think about that. It's not a violent, chaotic image. It's slow, methodical, inevitable. It perfectly captures that feeling of dread, that this wasn't just another army. It was a force of nature, and it was going to consume everything.
So, the conquest is done, the wars are over. But for Ying Zheng, tearing down the old world, that was the easy part. Now, he had to build something completely new in its place. And the very first thing he does is change his title. See, before, he was a Huang, which just means king. But there were lots of kings. That wasn't good enough. So he literally invents a new word. Huangdi, emperor. This was a massive statement. It basically said, I am not like the rulers who came before. I am on a whole other level. It's supreme, almost godlike ruler of everything under the sky. He was now Qin Shi Huang, the very first emperor.
And he didn't waste any time. He immediately starts smashing the old ways of doing things. From now on, everybody uses the same writing system. Everybody uses the same coins. Everybody uses the same weights and measures. He even, and I love this detail, standardized the width of axles on carts. Why? So every single cart in the empire would fit perfectly into the ruts of his brand new, massive road network. You see? These weren't just boring little rules. This was cultural engineering on a massive scale.
And this right here is the absolute heart of his legacy. He didn't just conquer them with armies. He forced them to become one people. By standardizing everything, culture, money, writing, he took 7 totally different kingdoms and basically hammered them together into one solid block. The very concept of a single unified China, it starts right here. He didn't just conquer it, he created it.
But, and this is a huge but, all of this unity, it came at an absolutely horrifying price, which brings us to the big question, the one that historians still argue about today. Was this guy a visionary genius, or was he a complete and utter tyrant?
Let's look at the ledger, because it is just brutal. On the plus side, he ended 250 years of constant war. He created a unified nation that would last for millennia. He built incredible things like the very first version of the Great Wall. But the cost, my God, the cost. His wars killed millions. He literally burned books and buried scholars alive to control what people thought. And all those grand projects, they were built by millions of people forced into labor, many of whom were just worked to death. It's a lot to take in.
So, that's where we're left. How do you judge a man like that? Can you even separate the incredible achievements from the horrifying atrocities? He forged a nation that has lasted for over 2,000 years, but he did it with a level of cruelty that's hard to even imagine. So, visionary unifier or ruthless tyrant? The real answer is probably that he had to be both. And that fundamental conflict, that push and pull between the power of a unified state and the cost to the people living in it, that would define China for the next 2,000 years, right up to this very day.